Alexis, CEO of WeTransact Live, and I'm here to have an incredible introduction and to one of the people in the ecosystem that we absolutely are so excited to talk with today. Her name is Claire Shorall, and she is the CEO and founder of the Topknot. Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm good. How about you? Thank you for having me, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. We're good. We're good over here. We're in San Francisco. Where are you at right now?
Same city. Where in the city are you?
Perfect. We're in Japantown by the Fillmore. So
Wonderful. I'm on the slightly sunnier side, so I'm in the dog patch.
Claire, tell us a little bit. Really, not everybody in the community knows about Topknot. Many of them, I'm sure, do, but it's better to hear it from the source. Why don't you tell us what is Topknot and how did it begin?
Yeah, so Topknot is a peer coaching system for women. It began with this idea that coaching is incredibly powerful and everyone should have access to it, but it is multiple hundreds of dollars an hour, which makes it out of reach for many who would actually get the most benefit from using coaching. And so we thought, okay, how do we bring coaching to everyone? And we did that through technology and these peer groups that actually operate without a facilitator. So we took out the need for a middleman or middle woman, middle person. And we created a structure. It's Rails, essentially, for peers to be able to coach one another and access some pretty powerful skills. So powerful questions, deep listening, authentic acknowledgement. We teach these skills and we construct the space and give all the resources necessary. And the outcome's quite beautiful. So people are getting the best of coaching, but for about $20 a month and down.
Wow, that is amazing. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited about what you were doing, because this is something that can help so many founders, especially remotely. I'm sure. Now, did you start your company post-COVID? Were you pre-COVID? Tell us about that journey of when you launched.
Yeah, so my background's in public education. I'm going pre-COVID. So I've been a classroom educator for the past 11 years. This is actually my first fall not going back to the classroom, which is working through it, but I'm glad I have a peer coaching group, right? Yeah, so I come from a public education background. My co-founder is from adult learning, and we actually had been collaborating for the past 6 years on various projects. I spent the last 3 years leading up to starting Topknot in venture capital. So I was an investor and I was seeing all of these founders doing all of these amazing things. And I was like, I have all these amazing things I want to put out into the world. And the more I worked with founders, the more I realized that that was the energy. So I wanted to give my fund like an incredible amount of heads up, it mattered to me immensely that we exited the work that we had both been doing in a really thoughtful way. So we decided to give our notice in, I guess it was August of 2019 to start in February of 2020, which in retrospect was a really interesting time to have picked to sort of jump into a deep end. So we are aligned with COVID in that way. Actually, when we first started, we were trying to figure out, Brooke lives in Durham and I live in San Francisco. We were like, well, where are we going to headquarters? Like, where are we going to work together? And she came out here for 2 weeks. I went to Durham for 2 weeks. And as I was leaving, so this was the end of February, my partner has some teammates in China. And so he was like a little bit more up on what was happening. And he was sort of like, you're not going to see Brooke anytime soon. And I didn't actually really internalize it until she took me to the airport. She was supposed to come like 3 days later. And I was like, you're not going to come. I'd be crying. And yeah, that is true. But it has caused us to, set up an entirely remote company. We have people in Seattle. We just hired somebody in Texas. Our intern was in New York. And I actually think, there will be relics of starting your company during a pandemic. And ours, I think, is part of our DNA. Yeah. But it's also, from the start, 1 week in, we were already starting to run groups because it just motivated such an incredible need for connection and for making sense of the moment.
I love that. I think all the founders here are definitely identifying because we went through that ourselves, whether it was a pivot or you didn't see it coming because really, unless you had someone maybe in China, you might have had a month heads up. But even then, it may not have fully, I think, sunk in as we obviously here in the US hadn't really
Right.
ever experienced that type of lockdown. I mean,
You're
100 years ago, but not many living people here to really share those experiences. So that is amazing. So you guys created, now in terms of your own fundraising process and how that went, what were some of the challenges you faced and how did you overcome that? That's a huge area that our founders are working on now. We'd love to share advice.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to start by naming the privilege that I bring in this conversation because I had been in early stage VC. And so many of the relationships I had were personal relationships where I could text someone or, I was a known entity. People understood where I was coming from. And I actually think some of that privilege manifested itself as knowing when to press the brakes and halt. So we went out with the intention of trying to raise pre-product, pre everything, right? And our thought was to do it in March of 2020, which in retrospect is sort of hilarious. And I would say, we were having these initial conversations and I was experiencing people as sort of like ducks where they were calm on the surface, but like I could see the wheels scrambling and I could just totally understand, like everybody was trying to figure things out. It was unmooring for the whole group, right?
Yeah.
That was like right when YC Demo Day went onto a platform. Anyway, long story short, I had enough sort of knowledge and insiderness to be like, there's something about the energy here that is just off and wrong. Not to mention that, at that time I was packing up my classroom. There were lots of other things that were happening. And so we pressed the brakes. We were once again incredibly privileged to have a few backers in my network primarily, who gave us like a small launch round, right?
Yeah.
And then we like didn't pay ourselves. We just sort of sat on that money. The thought was we wanted to have enough in the bank that we would be able to bring on somebody and know that we could pay them for 1 year.
Yeah.
It's like very important to me that we are able to pay people what they're worth, particularly as being a woman founded company that is attractive to women to work for. Like underpaying people would be part of the problem.
Yes. No,
particularly because well, and our first employee, our founding engineer, is Black, is queer. Like there were so many reasons why she needed to be paid at market rate, or as close as we could to it, right? And I just I think it's really important when people bring on people early, like they think about who and what they're doing, like who they're offering these opportunities to. And we wanted to do that broadly. Daphne is like the most spectacular human and one of my closest friends. And like she could go out and get any job. And I'm so glad that she chose to work with us. But that was the point of raising that money. We then went out and we raised a pre-seed in the fall. And so we raised an additional 650,000 and still living off that money today. Thank you. Yeah. I think that I work with a lot of founders on their early stage fundraising. Like this is definitely a way in which I leverage the information I have and the privilege and the access. And there's no one right answer, right? It's very much an art over a science. But for us, we wanted to constrain the time that we were raising because we didn't want it to be distracting. We wanted enough capital to be able to bring on like another incredible person in our network, and enough runway to be able to test a couple core assumptions that we were working through. Some people like to raise like a bunch up front and then figure things out. I mean, like some people have the access to an opportunity to raise a bunch of. There was something for us about being a little bit constrained in resources, because one of the things that we wanted to be clear about was that there was either something here or there wasn't. I think some people like linger too long on trying to figure that out. Like we just wanted to we wanted to have enough where there was an urgency in finding something. Doesn't have to be it, but it would have to be something. And, frankly, we wanted something that the two of us and everyone on our team would be excited enough to invest the next 10 years to build, right? And I don't think that takes millions and millions of dollars to figure out. We've also then made choices about building that allow us to extend our runway for longer. So my co-founder, Brooke, whose like background is in adult learning, she's basically an engineer at this point, right? Because we've been using Bubble, and I mean, she was technical from the start, like that. This isn't like a total leap, but yeah, we just have been very thoughtful about doing things in-house and making money last longer so that we have a sense of what we actually want to go out and build when we go out and raise.
Yeah.
But that's not the only way. There's no one prescriptive path. And I think as long as you know like what you want your canvas to look like at the end and why, yeah, fundraising, people look for advice, and there's so much out there, but it has to make sense to you and why you would want to construct your round in the way you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that resonates so much with really knowing really where your goal is and where you want to go, and then knowing what your kind of tactics are to get there, and letting some of that reveal itself. You know, I think that's part of what's really important that a lot of founders can take away is there isn't a roadmap. You don't want a roadmap. Because then it's going to be somebody else's roadmap with their North Star, not your North Star. So I love that advice, and that's huge. I think all the founders here just like stay true to your vision, stay true to what you're working towards, know what your values are. How was that when you were working with your own co-founder in really establishing those values? Did you guys start with like, okay, here's what we want to do in our mission? Did you let that evolve?
Yeah.
How did you decide that with your co-founder?
Yeah. I think it's important to say that Brooke is probably the human I admire the most, like in the world, and have done so basically since the moment I met her. And so, you know, I see a lot of like co-founder matching tools out there and things like that wouldn't have been something I think I personally would have been comfortable using. It's not to cast aspersions on like that mode, but I just, Brooke and I took the better part of a year to discuss our personal values, our history, whether or not we wanted to have kids, our relationship with money, how we deal with conflict. Like that orientation to relationship and partnership is the way that like I wanted to do this work. So let's put like we really deeply explored who we were and who we were together before we even started this. In some ways, it was the original Topknot group. OG Topknot group. But as far as company values are concerned, so we have pillars and we have 3 of them. We probably took, and this is no exaggeration, in fact, it's probably an underestimate, 75 hours of like talk time in order to establish them. So our company pillars are equity, intentionality, and growth. And they pervade everything that we do, from fundraising to hiring to product to like in every way that we interface with people on the team externally. And that's actually frankly how we check decisions, right? Like if our decisions don't fit within that framework, then it's not the right decision for us to make. It's not that it's a wrong decision, it's just not right for us. So yeah, I think, you know, there's this trope of companies having, you know, values painted on the wall, and it may or may not align with how people actually experience the space. Like for us, we live, breathe, operate out of these pillars for everything we do. And like we need people to hold us honest to them. And I think thus far we have been really intentional, obviously, about maintaining them. So for example, like for equity, we have a framework, a race, equity, diversity, and inclusion framework that we made for ourselves that checks before we start any project, like who is contributing here, for whom could it be a stretch, like whose research are we reading, who's giving feedback. There's a pre-mortem, like the actual process, and then a post-mortem. And that was actually not just developed by us, that was developed by people for whom like they have a range of backgrounds and perspectives that we frankly don't hold, right? So that's like an intentional way that equity shows up. Growth for us, like we are our second hire is a coach, which for obvious reasons makes a ton of sense, but she does professional development for us as well. So we've carved out that space from the beginning, like more hearty professional development than I've received at much larger organizations. And I think some people might think, okay, well, there's 3 of you, is that like worth the time? Or there's 4, and yes, it absolutely is, because like that's how we are moving through the world. And we brought on an intern, we're bringing on 2 more like community hires in the next weeks or 2. Everything moves so fast. But one of the things I'm most proud of already is the way in which people grow as a result of being on our team, right? And like that has to be true if what we're saying out in the world is like, yeah, we're able to help you through this authentically. Like growth is a thing. So anyway, I'm a bit rambling about the values, but I just
it's fantastic. I love it because your passion shows through, and that authenticity about, like we could talk about, like you said, 75 hours probably went into it, and you could probably continue talking about it, but that's finding that core of what really drives like the passion of your group and what really holds that glue together, because evolution is going to happen within the business, but having that you can always come back to, check yourself, say, hey, look, are we at the right spot? That's huge. I think a lot of founders now are really embracing that more than ever. Like you said, there is a transition where many founders now, it's not just a word on the wall. It's actually, how do we implement and how do we do that? So to hear how you're implementing that is great and so inspiring to everybody here. Tell us a little bit about the Topknot, and, when do you see like founders in particular, since that's majority of our audience, when do you see them really going to Topknot? What type, is it soft skills? What are they really gravitating towards when they need help?
Yeah. So Topknot is really good at helping you ask sort of like bigger existential questions or things around like who I am in the world, my relationship with confidence, money, the types of things that we are particularly well suited for investigating are a little bit less tactical, and a little bit more so on we sort of think of them as like ungoogleable questions, and like no one can answer them but you. And they're probably going, then they're probably going to be a journey to answer. But tactically, so there was somebody who's an early stage founder who was part of a Topknot group, and in a feedback call, she mentioned that like a member of her Topknot group had said something that like struck her a certain type of way, and I was like, great, like let's explore that. And when she was done explaining, I said, what would it look like for you to practice having a hard conversation in this space? Like what might that mean for you? And she said something about, like this is a good anticipation of the leadership I'm going to have to show later. And long story short, she sent me an email afterwards, and she was like, like this is just such a helpful delineated space, because like we're all here to push and grow. And like, I'm not going out and getting drinks with this person. Like, I don't grab dinner with them. Like this idea of like relative anonymity, but like there is a common feature across everyone who's in a group. So, if you're out there and you want to be in a Topknot group, like there are people in Topknot groups that all have like a certain commonality, and like early stage founders that very much could be one.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have to be working on your business per se, because one of the things that's really important about the way we set up our system was that it's the same as what I do with my coach, and what I do with my Topknot group when I'm with them, right? Like, I might be like talking about this theme of understanding what confidence looks like and shows up in my life, or what my leadership looks like, but like, it could be Thursday and I'm having my meeting in an hour and something shitty really just, should I not swear? Something just happened to me. and like, that's the thing that's present, and it is blocking any longer. And like, so the group has to be flexible enough, and it is flexible enough to be able to deal with the immediacy while holding the long-term still present. And yeah, so there are, I mean, I think a lot of the people who are on the platform in the sort of early founding membership days
Yeah.
are growth oriented, are ambitious, are trying to figure out something big like navigating a change or transition or a commitment or choice. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people who are like stepping out of something maybe a little bit less risky and stepping into owning and designing their life more. So it's a really incredible space for founders. It is very different than the other spaces I think that I've
Yeah.
seen set up. And, frankly, I think it's also one of these places where you get benefit from being a founder where you might not actually have to be surrounded by other founders in order to get benefit.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get into this little bubble where it's like, oh, only these people would understand, but I don't think that's the case. I think new
Yeah.
moms feel the same way. I think people who are transitioning feel similarly. I think
Yeah.
like anyway, so I don't I'm just so proud of what we've built, particularly in the
Yeah.
group space, because it works. And by
Yeah.
works, it means like people come out of it with even more questions, and they have clarity on things that they didn't have previously. And the feedback we get is profound. So
That's
I'm
amazing. And
excited.
I mean, especially considering how accessible you've made it. And I think that's something that is such a big barrier for a lot of people in general, especially
Yeah.
when they're trying to improve, but maybe they, don't have a huge amount. You guys have made it so inclusive in terms of pricing as well and flexible. And
Yep.
to create this cross innovative, collaborative environment that's safe zone, there's people are so dynamic, and that's
Yeah.
something that definitely fits into what we always talk about here is whether you're in your startup, whether you're at home, whether you're with friends and family,
Yeah.
you have to live and be who you are. And so like embodying what we call the her principles, which is humanity, empathy, and responsibility, that
Yep.
means it doesn't matter if you're a fellow founder. There's another
Right.
human being you can learn from. And I think your
Yeah.
platform really gets that. There's so much to learn from each other and
Yeah.
actually from our uniquenesses and something that's not in our bubble. So I'm excited to connect founders with you guys because it's going to give you an incredible perspective and opportunity to really collaborate in a safe zone. And safe zones are really important for all the founders. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's it's a challenging road as a founder. And so
Yep.
there's a lot of founders who suffer different levels of PTSD, whether it's pitching to an investor and they like getting anxiety about it, or whether it's like sharing their ideas or whatever it might be. There's always some resistance. So tell us a little bit about the safe zone. So when somebody goes, a founder is like, okay, I want to do this. I definitely want to participate. The community
Yep.
sounds really aligned. What's their
Yep.
experience like? How do they get started? Walk us through it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about safety for 1 second
Okay.
too, and about unpacking. So I
Yes.
do think it's important for us to delineate coaching from other mental health services,
Yes.
particularly therapy. So therapy, this is going to be a shorthand, and there are so many people who are like much more thoughtful about this than even myself. I am a certified coach. I am not at all a therapist, but
Yes.
an easy shorthand for people to understand is therapy is about looking back and unpacking and thinking about the ways in which historical events impact your today.
Okay.
Coaching is about planning and looking forward. It's about making a path. It's about understanding your motivations. It's about awareness and goal setting and it is rich in and of itself, but it is a projection forward. And so it's really important to us when people come to Topknot that they understand what they're getting. Now, being in a space where you get to talk about all this stuff can feel therapeutic, but it is not actually therapy.
It's not therapy.
Yeah. It's not therapy.
It's very actionable. I love that. It's forward.
Yeah. Well, it's very actionable, and like there are safeguards that we put up, and there are ways in which we support people to make the most of that space. But this is actually why we are able to do this in these facilitated peer sessions, because and I also want to point out we are bringing the best of coaching to people. There are still so many reasons why people should and can go out and get coaching one-on-one, because it is necessarily a different experience, but we are getting at many of the key things through the setup that we've created. Okay. So like putting all that aside,
It helps because everybody is, you know, they want to know what they're getting into and what's what, and you're the expert. So you clarifying it helps us all kind of know, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and so people who come to us need to affirm a code of conduct. And they also need to affirm the fact that they are not currently in crisis, because we are not well suited for taking care of you in that moment.
Right.
And we also have expectations of how you exist. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not challenging, that there isn't conflict, that there are lots of ways that people can spur growth. But there are rules of the road, and we have no tolerance for anyone breaking those, because if safety is compromised, the whole thing's compromised. In fact, we wrote the code of conduct before we ever had a platform, right? Like that was the most important thing. So when somebody comes to Topknot, as of right now, but I'm going to put an asterisk on that because I will share something. You will get a limited drop here. But when somebody comes to Topknot, so we are creating the conditions for coaching through technology, which is the platform, and then these peer groups. You can come and use the technology for free forever. It is open and available. The richness does, and like the supercharging happens when you actually put some time aside to be working with others. This is my teacher self-talking, but learning is a social construction. And I think that whether it be the accountability, the perspective, the opportunity for dialogue, like actually being in a space where you are working with other people is the thing that I think allows people to start seeing the impact in their life. That particular group, there's like a separate sign up. People are give us their affinities, what goals they want to work on, and then we take that information. We construct a group of 3 to 5 people who fit that, fit time zone,
lots of
age, affinity, like like all these parameters. And it's really great. I mean, the groups are there's always a reason. And I think people spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like, these people feel so meaningful, and I'm like, just go with it. But anyway, so groups are this separate thing that people can opt into. But the really exciting thing that we're doing for September, I will tell you, it will get announced next week. So September is self-improvement month. That's not our holiday, that's a holiday. And to celebrate, we are doing a range of activities that allow people to opt in at different levels of commitment. So every single day, we're going to be publishing an interview from some woman or non-binary person about their journey. The interviews are based off those interviews. We are going to create daily ritualized reflective spaces called Room to Grow. They are half an hour facilitated sessions where people will have the opportunity to reflect and then move into discussion if that's of interest. Otherwise, they can continue to reflect. But we're just creating this space for people to really think about what they want and get clear on it. And then we're hosting weekly workshops. The ones I know of are one about exploring your values. There's one that's going to be like improv, where using improv to understand your response to failure and mistakes. There is a space for cultivating joy just for Black women and femmes. Anyway, it's going to be awesome. There's something happening every single day. But I think what's going to be cool. Oh, and it's all free. I'm not leading with that because that's not the point. The point is the growth. But
for the mic drop and it's free.
And the hope is that people can enter our community at a commitment level that makes sense to them, and engage with personal growth in a way that meets their needs in the moment. And so, like, I absolutely love the group, and the group is so powerful. And if you want a taste of what Topknot's like, the ethos, how we honor your autonomy, your time, your energy, your expertise on your own damn life, like, just come in. I haven't been more excited about something in a really long time. So
I love it.
I'm really
I
looking
love
forward to it.
And everything that you're talking about, we'll make sure we add those links or put in the description so everybody can
Yes.
sign up. Definitely do.
Yes.
I mean, that's just such a huge value, and I totally see why. You know, you are so
Yes.
confident and excited about what you guys are offering and the value that it brings. So to be that
Yes.
confident to give it for free and really let people like
Yep.
have a taste is fantastic. It speaks volumes to you guys and what you really do. That's so far superior in this area. And thank you for being
We appreciate that.
here and doing this and creating these spaces and bringing all your other experiences and knowledge together and your co-founders' experience and knowledge. It's such a unique recipe and it really separates you guys out, and why we're so excited to have you part of her ecosystem, because our biggest thing is we don't want to put founders in environments that don't align with their main values, and our values here of her align with your values, and we're like, we know this is going to be an easy no-brainer for our founders to explore, get involved, and
I love it. We're excited to incorporate them as a part of the community. Welcome.
Yes.
I mean, you're already Topknot. Come on in.
Yeah, actually, I did Topknot just today for the interview. I don't always have, but I did. I was like, okay, I'm Topknot. I need to put my Topknot back on.
The best part for me is that for me, a messy bun is like the way I move in the world when I'm just like putting up my hair, just need to do something. And people are like, oh, are you wearing that? I'm like, yes, I'm on brand. I'm like, I'm never going to actually have to get dressed up ever again.
Well, we absolutely love that. And before we go, are there any other things you'd love to share with fellow founders out there who obviously are in the trenches? We always like to pay it forward. Maybe it's like a word of advice. You've shared some incredible nuggets of information, insight, and like how it was for you. But what would you say to leave on a positive note for our founders, because we are all at various levels of our startups and not all of it's easy. Most of it is not at various stages. So we will leave it to you to just kind of share with us a word, if you could speak to them.
Yeah, one, I am you, right? And I do think, so Topknot is a little bit predicated on the idea that advice is bullshit, which it's not. Basically, I think it's really important for you to get good at accessing resources like these and making sense of them for you, right? Like, you have answers within you. You are the expert of your life. You know what really makes sense. Your gut and intuition is strong. There are places where support is really important. There's places where information is power and unlocking. There are places where network opens doors. I am not trying to take away anything from anyone. What I am saying, though, is that if you learn how to listen to yourself, like I am in the process of still learning how to listen to me, you will be served, right? Like, you will know why you're building what you're building. You will be able to brush off rejection. You will be able to celebrate failures more deeply. So my mom watches a lot of these things, and I don't know if she loves it when I swear, but I see people so frequently so hungry to get other people's path and journey. And I think those spaces are important, and sharing them is worthwhile. I'm running an interview series next month with 30 people, and I know that it's worthwhile. And really hone the skill of listening to yourself, because you're saying incredible things.
I love that. And that it's all about what we are trying to cultivate. All these stories, all these resources, you have to decide what's best for you. Right. And give your own inner voice as much credit or more, because you've lived with it your entire life. Right. You can trust it. Give it the credit it deserves. Yeah. I think we all need to be reminded of that and own that. And as leaders, that's our job too, to make sure everybody is stepping into that. So that is great advice.
Well,
take it for what it's worth. or ignore it, right?
Make it
your own. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Oh, this has been so fun to hang out with you. And of course, we look forward to sharing not only the upcoming events that you guys are doing. Anytime you're welcome back here. Anytime we might do a workshop with you in the future, just planting that seed down the road. Maybe we can.
Yes.
We'd love to. We'd love to.
Perfect.
You are always a joy and so great to see you. Thank you for sharing your personal journey and being so candid and open with us. We really appreciate it.
Stay candid. I always just, there's too little time to share truth, I think. So just make it 100% of the time.
I love it. Thanks, Claire. We will connect with you online and look forward to seeing you on the platform as everybody's going through their startup.